Wait, never mind, we're actually playing Metroid now. A long time ago, just 3 days shy of exactly 14 years prior, I reviewed BioMenace for the 78th episode of Ancient DOS Games. The thing is, looking back at my older videos, I can tell I was a scrub. It's hard for me to watch my older videos because I see just how far I've come and how far I've improved in terms of making these reviews. Now granted, most of my opinions of those old games haven't changed, be them favorable or unfavorable, but I look at how I've covered them and realize I can do so much better than that now. Not just in terms of getting my points across, but in terms of properly laying out why I have the opinions that I do. With BioMenace in particular, I didn't agree with the majority opinion that the game was decent, mainly because the second and third episodes ramped up the difficulty fiercely, seemed to rely on players understanding secret techniques to be able to survive, and shortcomings with the game's mechanics led to many frustrations as a new player, which might otherwise be bearable for veteran players, but that wasn't me, and so I went into it with zero nostalgia, thus was able to relay my thoughts without the rose tinting. And then never touched the game ever since. It wasn't until I started getting this video together that I even updated my shortcut for the game, as it was still pointing to the old program files folder for my 32-bit Windows XP machine instead of the modern program files x86 folder of my 64-bit systems. This was a game I didn't enjoy, and thus I never expected to go back to it. But then, back in mid-December last year, 2025, BioMenace Remastered hit the digital storefronts, being both developed and published by Rigel Gameworks, not Ember Heart Games, the group doing the other HD remasters of old Apogee titles like Crystal Caves and Monster Bash. And to that end, although there are similarities between how this game has been done compared to the other Apogee HD remasters, there are notable differences too. Also, full disclosure, I was sent a copy specifically for review, so this is actually the first time I've ever had to click that paid promotion checkbox when uploading a video. But I have not been given any instructions on what to say or do, just things to keep in mind if I reviewed the game prior to its full release. But since we're 2.5 months past the full release, I don't have to worry about any of that. So let's start with one of the more interesting additions to the game, which you'll notice the instant you begin a new game. Story segments. Back in the original game, the story was mostly consigned to the text you read from rescuing people, the ending segments of the episodes, and the documentation. Now here in this remaster, more has been done to flesh out the story properly, with each episode beginning with a story sequence, and additional story sequences being interjected into the episodes where appropriate to help push the narrative forward. Now these story sequences are also done in such a way that should you be playing the game without any visual enhancements enabled, they'll still look just fine. This leads us into the gameplay, and right off the bat, one massive improvement from the original game are the controls. Back in the DOS original, there were significant problems with the jumping mechanics in particular. The jumps felt very stiff, and it was incredibly easy to get pushed off of platforms or to somehow jump straight through platforms if they weren't even there. Here in this remaster, jumping not only flows properly, but is actually inaccurate in your favor. Now you can step almost completely off of the edge of a platform and the game will still think you're on it. Plus, if your head hits a ceiling and most of Snake Logan's body is beyond the ceiling, you'll get clipped sideways without affecting your jump arc, allowing you to easily scale yourself upwards where possible. Now it also helps that movement is being interpolated as well, so everything feels silky smooth at any frame rates. Now granted, smooth interpolation is just one of several graphical enhancements you can turn on or off, along with the original HUD style or an alternate miniaturized HUD style, plus there's a preset to just disable all enhancements all at once, as opposed to disabling them one at a time. They even went so far as to emulate the two different styles of ad-lib synth from the DOS era, allowing you to choose which you'd prefer. Back on the gameplay, another thing I noticed right away is that you now have the ability to cycle your weapon and grenade selections, with there being hard limits on how many clips and shots of each weapon you can stock, and how many of each grenade type you can stock. Being able to save up the more powerful weapons for when you really need them, or being able to switch back and forth between grenades and landmines as appropriate, is a feature that was sorely missing from the original game. Although truth be told, this did make the boss fights notably easier now, since I got into the habit of saving up my supergun ammo specifically for the bosses. Though I do actually have one minor gripe with the new weapon and grenade selection mechanics, or more specifically, with the auto selection mechanics. And basically, the way it works is that anytime you pick up a particular weapon or grenade type, your selected weapon or grenade type automatically switches to what you just picked up. Now, this can be pretty disorienting when it happens in the heat of battle, and would work better if instead you only auto-switch when running out of a particular weapon or grenade, or if you pick up a weapon or grenade type that you do not have stocked in that moment, as is how auto-selection usually works with most games, even 90s games like Doom. And before anyone complains, yes, I am aware there is an option in the menus to turn weapon auto-selection on and off, but guess what? This option does literally nothing as of my recording this video. And even if it was working as intended, that still doesn't negate that auto-selection is not working in an expected manner. Now, speaking of options, that was another thing I found curious, is that this remake actually allows you to change the difficulty selection mid-level. In fact, the game accounts for this in its new leaderboard system, marking any games completed with difficulty changes mid-game as having a, quote, mixed level of difficulty. The trick, though, is that the current level is reset back to the beginning if you do this, which makes sense given that enemy placements and quantities do change between the different skill selections. Also, back in the original game, Easy gave you 8 hit points, while both Medium and Hard only gave you 4 hit points. Here in this remaster, Medium now gives you 6 hit points. 3 other big changes which affect the overall difficulty include the lives mechanics, falling block mechanics, and how saving and loading are handled. The original game had extra lives, but that antiquated mechanic has been tossed right out the window. You now get infinite lives. And while you might think this would be a problem given how some of the later levels have been designed, specifically in regards to falling blocks which never respawn, well, now they do. Any block which falls and is meant through game logic to be used as a platform will now respawn infinitely, meaning it's no longer possible to softlock yourself in any levels which rely on this mechanic. Not to mention, saving and loading used to only save the state of your stats and put you at the start of whatever level you saved on. But here in this remaster, you save the exact state of the game, allowing you to reload exactly where you left off. All of these changes combined, along with a smoother motion and wider viewing distance, makes this game way more playable than it originally was. Back when I first covered this game all those years ago, I ran into considerable difficulties trying to make it beyond the first 3 levels of the second and third episodes of the game, but here in this remaster, I ran into almost no difficulties whatsoever, and even cleared the second and third episodes without even really having to think about it. Those original 3 episodes of the game just plain flow now in this remaster, allowing me to get into them and get through them with wit and skill, instead of wrestling with broken mechanics and questioning who's to blame, me or the game. And in fact, one thing I found very intriguing is that the game now has death hints in place when faced with confusing sections. For instance, near the end of the first level of the third episode, you have 2 paths you can take. One is instant death at the hands of radiation, and the other is less instant death at the hands of turrets trying to walk down a corridor. Now, if you die of the radiation, you get a message from Snake suggesting you can't go that way, and if you instead die in the tunnel of turrets, you get a different message from Snake suggesting there might be something hidden to help you on your way. And it turns out, yes, there is a hidden invulnerability potion right where that checkpoint is. And yes, this is in the original game too, but the original game doesn't even give you the faintest hint about this, meaning you're probably going to be stuck using the secret technique of brief invulnerability to make it through. Which, yes, all of the secret techniques do work in this game, and in fact, they're much easier to perform than before, though with a small caveat that for the 2 moves which require pressing left and right repeatedly, you must press left and right exactly 3 times, and you can't do it too fast, otherwise it won't work. Instead, you need to perform them at a comfortable pace, a fast but not finger-breaking fast. Because the timing is so much more lenient, it doesn't matter that the moves themselves are more precise in how to perform them, because the lenient timing means you can be much more consistent pulling them off, allowing you to take advantage of them much more often when it makes sense to do so. If you know they exist, as the remaster does not at any moment give any hints as to their existence. Now, before we get into the big addition of this remaster, let's talk about some other additions to the game, two of which I would consider noteworthy, one of which not so much, at least not the way it works right now: the score multiplier. If you kill 2 enemies in rapid succession, a score multiplier now shows up, doubling the points you get for your next couple kills, with each kill resetting the multiplier timer and possibly driving the multiplier even higher. The trick, though, is that not only is the multiplier timer very short-lived, it only applies to things killed after the multiplier comes into effect, meaning to take full advantage of this new mechanic for high-scoring purposes not only requires spending tons of time goading hordes of enemies into one spot to kill them all in rapid succession, but you also have to be mindful of the order you kill them in, since enemies vary wildly in terms of how many points they award. I feel this multiplier system would have worked better if it was done similar to the multi-kill experience multiplier found in Diablo 3, whereby you not only get a solid chunk of time to keep it going, but instead of awarding the multiplier as you get points, it's simply applied to all points earned from the first kill to last kill in the sequence when the timer expires. As for the more noteworthy additions, one of them is a new tutorial section, which guides you through all of the basics and is definitely a huge help for new players to help them get a feel for the game, while the other is a brand new level editor, which gives you full command over the creation of levels. Well, the only trick is that, unlike Crystal Caves HD, where the level designs are pretty simple, level designs here are considerably more elaborate, and so making anything decent with this editor is a much larger undertaking. But it is really neat that this is built in at all and as full-featured as it is. But the really big addition to the game is a brand new 4th episode. And the crazy thing is that, beyond just being a new set of levels, this 4th episode also introduces multiple new mechanics into the game which weren't there before, such as colored keys and elevators with multiple stops, among other things which I'm not going to spoil. However, I will say the overall level design of the 4th episode is a slight downgrade in quality for a couple of reasons. Firstly, almost every level in the original BioMenace was very linear, and levels which weren't linear still had an overall linear goal, as in, you rarely ever had to backtrack to make progress. But here in the new 4th episode, there's a bunch of backtracking in almost every level, making them a bit more tedious as a result. Especially this level here, which is all about disabling a ludicrous number of force fields while moving across moving platforms, where one wrong jump spells a respawn at your last checkpoint. Secondly, the 4th episode is very stingy when it comes to weapon and grenade pickups. Running out of weapon ammo can happen, though it isn't too likely if your aim is true, but you will constantly be running out of grenades up until you reach beyond the halfway point. It just really does not give you enough of them. Not to mention, so many of the power-ups which were normally out in the open in the original episodes are now hidden in the doors, which require keys to open here in episode 4. Whereas before, opening doors mostly just revealed scoring items, progress items, or extra lives, which now just score points instead. Though understandably, you might be confused as to why I consider that a problem. I mean, I get why this was done this way, since power-ups out in the open are collected automatically even if you can't make use of them, whereas items indoors require you to press up to collect them. But because the first 3 episodes train your muscle memory to instinctively just hit up on all items found indoors, it actually makes it easier to grab things like medkits you don't want to use in that moment because you don't see them coming. I really feel like keeping the power-ups out in the open and mostly using the doors for scoring items and progression was the right way to do it, and that's just not how it generally works in the new 4th episode. And now don't get me wrong, the level design in episode 4 isn't all that bad, it's just not up to the same level of quality as the first few episodes. At least, in regards to how things turned out. Remember, that gun gauntlet at the start of episode 3 was just plain stupid in the original game, but with the changes and additions made with this remaster, it essentially turned that otherwise bad design into acceptable design. If you compare the quality of the episode 4 level design with the level design of episodes 1 through 3 not remastered, then yeah, episode 4 wins hands down. But because the remastering effectively made those original levels better, episode 4 now had a higher bar to reach to be at the same level of quality, and while it sure made an attempt and got fairly close, it didn't reach that bar, if that makes any sense. Regardless, BioMenace Remastered plays way better than the original BioMenace ever did, and is absolutely the way I would recommend playing the game nowadays on modern systems. You can grab a copy on either GOG or Steam for $15, and you can find links to both in the video description. However, if you want to play the original DOS version of the game on old retro hardware, well, for some mysterious reason, the original game has been delisted from both GOG and Steam for reasons I can't even begin to fathom, other than it somehow being the smarter marketing move. Whatever the case, the original's been freeware for quite a long time now, so you can just pull it up from your favorite DOS gaming website of choice. But still, this is something weird that I wanted to point out. Anywho, that'll be all for today's ADG Mod video. Next up, 2 Saturdays from now, on March 14th, will be a filler, and I think it's high time I made a video all about VR, because I bought my VR headset back in 2020 and have never stopped using it since. But so many people have stopped using theirs, and it's a bit sad because I understand why people give up on VR after trying it out, and the root problem is almost always that they're just not getting what they want out of it, either due to being recommended games which don't really appeal to them, or by being let down by how criminally short so many quote-unquote experiences are. So I'm going to demystify the present VR landscape, explain what to look for, how to find the kinds of games you want, and showcase some of my own picks across multiple genres. So be sure to stay tuned to see for yourselves that, just like with graphic adventures, VR isn't dead or dying, you just need to know what to look for. Thanks for watching, and extra special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters. Even as little as $1 a month really helps keep things going, so please consider joining these fine folk over at patreon.com/KASICK. Oh yeah, here's that guy sleeping in ketchup. Yeah, I've long since learned my lesson, and will now simply avoid showing graphic violence when possible, or censor it when I can't avoid it in games which otherwise barely have much of any. Again, it's been 14 years since I last played this thing.